In today's episode, customer thought we were moving her stuff too slow and wearing her tone, so we hurried up. Want me to pay the final month on my phone account? Here's my card info. So you will close my account if I don't agree to pay higher interest rates? Okay. So let's get started. Customer thought we were moving her stuff too slow and wearing her tone, so we hurried up. So I work as a mover for a very small moving company. My boss, let's call him Mike, is a really nice guy. It's really just a two-man operation, with me working as a subcontractor under him with a few regular guys we call in for bigger moves. It's really physically demanding work sometimes, but typically our customers are super nice, and the pay is pretty good. Most people are just happy to have someone else to lift their heavy stuff and get it into a truck. And we're always super careful to not cause any damage to the buildings we're moving in and out of or the items we're moving, which most people appreciate. Not this lady. Let's call her Darcy. So Darcy booked a move with Mike, and told him she had a small storage unit she wanted us to load up into a 20-foot truck. We said no problem. As the date of her move approached though, so did a huge snowstorm. Days before her move, the news started reporting that the weather was expected to take a severe turn for the worst. Not uncommon for the time of year in our state, but also something not to be trifled with. We called Darcy a couple days before the move to see about rescheduling to avoid the storm, and she said she absolutely had to move that day, no other days would work. A lot of, probably much smarter, movers would have cancelled, but after talking, Mike and I thought it was no big deal. We move in the snow all the time. Just meant we would have to dress appropriately, and be extra careful not to injure ourselves or damage any property. Cut to the day of the move. We get to Darcy's storage unit, expecting a 10x10x15 standard storage unit full of your usual stuff based on what she'd indicated on the phone, and loaded into a 20-foot truck. That's a pretty easy job to get done in the 2 hours that she'd already prepaid for. As we pulled up, the snow was already coming down pretty heavily, and the first thing that made us nervous was the truck. Instead of a 20-foot truck, there was a huge 26-foot truck. Darcy greeted us by the truck and showed us the storage unit. Darcy, okay. So, this is our unit. We shut down our businesses, and I'm moving it out of town to pursue other opportunities, and I need all of this loaded up in 2 hours. The last movers I had got it unloaded in about that long. Mike said something about the truck being bigger than she told us. Darcy, yeah, it's the biggest one U-Haul had. Last time we used another company, and it was much bigger. I'm worried about getting it all, but you guys will have to figure it out. I need all of it. This was a huge storage unit. Like the kind you'd store a few cars or some farm equipment in. When we opened it up, it was filled with what appeared to be the contents of a couple of pretty decently sized businesses. A dozen of those huge floor-to-ceiling filling cabinets, several desks, office chairs, some really huge glass tables. And all of it was incredibly heavy. Now, our company's safety guidelines for weight limits are 100 pounds per person lifting an item, but there's no real practical way to enforce that in the field, so we usually wind up using our best judgment, even if the item is over that limit. Nearly everything there was over limit, but we had our equipment, and we were pretty confident we could handle everything, weight-wise. Mike and I are both pretty strong. But in my estimation, this was definitely going to take a bit longer than 2 hours. Mike told her that we would do our absolute best. To be fair, he should have leveled with her then and there that it would take a bit more time, but he probably wanted to see if we could just get it busted out as quick as possible, and see where we were at before getting the customer needlessly worried. Darcy sat in her truck nearly the whole time we were working, so she could stay warm. Perfectly understandable since it was -2 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and the snow was coming down pretty hard. Though she'd occasionally roll down her window to offer up critiques. Mostly about how much time we were taking going up and down the metal ramp of the truck, which was now covered in ice and snow. About an hour and some change into the move, Darcy gets out of her truck and starts chatting with Mike about her previous movers, and how they did cause some damage to her stuff, but they were so fast. It was weird. She went back and forth between complaining about them and praising them for their speed. And she kept referring to them as the professional moving service I hired, which really bugged me, because the way she said it seemed to be implying that because we aren't a big national company like Mayflower, then somehow Mike and I weren't professional movers. Despite the fact that this is literally our full-time jobs. Now we're far enough into this move that we could tell this was going to run long. Mike decides it's a good idea to let her know that it's probably going to take a half hour or so longer than expected, which was still a feat, considering how much there was to move, and how well packed this truck was. I pride myself on playing a mean game of truck Tetris. Darcy was not having this. She started to get upset and started saying how we were just trying to get more money out of her, and we were dilly-dallying. Yes, those words actually left the mouth of a grown woman. Then she starts in on how the professional movers got this same stuff unloaded in 2 hours, it should take the same time to load it. Mike explains to her that unloading always takes less time than loading, because you're moving it into a bigger space, and you don't have to pack and pad the stuff to fit into a truck. I also mention that there's literally a blizzard coming down, and we're only going to go a little over. She gets quiet and seething. Mike can tell how angry she is and lets her know we won't charge her for any extra time since it's not her fault the weather is crappy. He also brings up that they damaged her stuff, and we've done a pretty good job. Darcy, I don't care. You said 2 hours, I expect it done. Just get it done. I'm going to leave you guys a terrible review. She stomps back to her truck without saying a word. I'm usually pretty chill, but I was already getting increasingly mad at this woman. Her yelling at my boss and calling us lazy when we were risking our health and safety to move her stuff in a blizzard was just too much for me. Mike thinks about this for a moment. I know customer reviews are super important to us as a small business. The booking site we use highlights the last handful of reviews, so a bad one takes forever to stop showing up as basically the first thing people see when they click on your page. So I'm expecting Mike to try and keep her happy, but instead he just grins and turns to me. Mike, F***ck it. You heard her. Cue malicious compliance. She wanted it all loaded in 2 hours? That's exactly what we do. The front half of her truck was loaded up neatly, with everything padded and stacked tightly floor to ceiling to keep it from moving on the road. I pride myself on my ability to load a truck properly and safely without wasting any space. The second half of her truck was the worst, jankiest truck I've ever loaded in my life. We're talking huge heavy office furniture haphazardly stacked on top of each other at the weirdest angles. Heavy stuff on top of light stuff, anything to just get the storage unit empty and the truck door closed. We even stacked really heavy office chairs on top of glass tabletops. By the end of it, the truck looked like you'd asked Escher or Geiger to draw you a picture of an office. I just want to be clear, we've never intentionally damaged a customer's property, and we never would. We pride ourselves on our professionalism, courtesy, and specifically our ability to get your stuff where it's going safely. But the particular combination of unsafe conditions, and this lady's outright disregard for our safety and feelings was just too much. And technically we didn't damage anything. Nothing was broken when we closed the truck doors. But literally the first bump in the road or decently tight turn was definitely going to cause hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars in damage. We closed the truck door and walked over to Darcy's truck and let her know. Mike went to her truck. He told her that we were done, and that he wasn't going to charge her at all for the move. She insisted that she's not poor, and doesn't need charity, and Mike just said that it was clear that she wasn't happy, and that he didn't need her $150. That's right, we charged $75 per hour, so the extra half hour we needed to do it right would have cost her a whopping $37. He canceled the job and refunded her what she'd already prepaid. As we drove away in Mike's car, I looked at him. Me, You realize that by the time she gets where she's going, she's looking at a lot of damaged furniture, right? She's going to hit us with a bad review, and maybe even try to sue. Mike, she was worried about paying an extra $37. I doubt she'll risk more money on hiring a lawyer. And besides, you can't leave a review on the site if the job gets cancelled. We just gave her exactly what she wanted. And besides, it's worth losing out on the money I would have made just to see her face when I said I didn't need her $150. When he dropped me off, he still paid me for my time because fuck that lady. My boss, Mike, is a really nice guy. Want me to pay the final month on my phone account? Here's my card info. I live in Israel where the credit cards are mostly run and operated by banks rather than independent companies. Because the banks stand to profit from consumer debt and interest charges, they really push people to get credit cards rather than debit cards, and they work with big retailers to prefer credit cards by, for example, putting a surcharge on transactions using debit cards. They do still mostly offer debit cards though, since families often get them for teens as a first step toward financial independence. My wife and I have long struggled over spending in debt and have, for the last several years, managed well by not using credit cards at all. When we came here, it took a bit to convince the bank representative that we really did only want debit cards. Nonetheless, we have them, and they work as expected in 99% of situations. One of those situations was for our cell phone contract, which we paid via debit card automatic withdrawal for the last 2 years. A few months back, the company started contacting us to tell us that we hadn't paid. We eventually figured out that their system somehow figured out that our card info was from a debit card rather than a credit card, and they, according to their policy, stopped accepting payment. When we called to sort out the problem, and they refused to take our debit card as payment, our response was to change phone carriers. Since we changed carriers, the company has contacted us to pay for the final month's bill. When a representative called me a few weeks ago to ask for payment, I happily provided them my card details and told them they were free to take the payment. After the system refused payment, the representative realized it was because it is a debit card and told me, "I'm sorry, our system can't take debit cards." To which I responded, "I'm not sorry at all. This is a legal form of money. If you can't take my payment, that does not bother me." I think she was surprised and confused because she genuinely responded, "Oh, okay," and we hung up. They haven't gotten back in touch since. "So you will close my account if I don't agree to pay higher interest rates?" Okay. So this was back during the 2008 government mortgage crisis. Had great credit, a great job, and multiple credit cards I used to manage the different properties I owned, a personal card, gas cards, etc. So one day I get a letter from a credit card company that rhymes with Apple Pank saying that they unilaterally were raising my rates from 13.99% annually to 27% annually. If I wanted to keep my card, something many people during the crisis needed to do to survive, I had to agree to the new rate, otherwise they would close my account. I would not be able to make any more charges on the card, and I would have to continue making monthly payments at my current interest rate until the card was paid off. Of course, I had done nothing wrong credit-wise to deserve this treatment from my credit card company, almost doubling of my interest rate, so I called their service line. After being on hold for over 2 hours, I finally got to speak to a CSR, and after not getting anywhere with her, I had to hold for another 30 minutes to talk to her supervisor. I was basically told, very rudely, that I could either accept the new rate or chose to close my account. Those were my only 2 options. Incensed, I said fine, close it, and they did. What they didn't know was that a week prior I had transferred all the balances from my other cards, over $22,000, to their card without paying a transfer fee, and at a promotional rate of 1.9% for 1 year. But because of the law at the time, they could only charge me at a rate of 1.9% until the loan was paid. Here's the malicious compliance part. So here I am 13 years later paying the absolute minimum payment I am required to make each month, never missing a payment and never paying late, otherwise their default rate of 27% would kick in. Since the inflation rate during these years has been well over the 1.9% interest I pay, it's like free money. I paid off every other creditor I had with the money I saved and don't even use credit cards anymore as I've been able to save enough to live on a cash-only basis. They've tried multiple times to get me reactivate the card or to transfer the balance to another super-duper account with lots of benefits for me, like paying a much higher interest rate, without success. The only thing I lament is that all good things must come to an end as my balance is now down to $1,000 or less, but at least it will last another couple of years. P.S. Young folks, I lucked out, I would have been up a creek otherwise. If you don't have credit card debt now, avoid it like the plague. It's okay to get a card, you need it for many things in today's world, just pay it off every month. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.